What if I told you that everything you believe about yourself, about success, about freedom isn't really yours? That the thoughts you think are your own have been carefully planted in your mind by invisible systems of control. And the scariest part, you probably feel free. You probably believe you're making your own choices. But what if that belief is the very mechanism that keeps you trapped? This isn't a conspiracy theory, this is reality. And Michel Foucault saw it before most of us even knew we were caged.
Click subscribe to this channel to get more profound insights.
You've never seen the bars. That's what makes them so powerful. Foucault didn't just study institutions, he exposed the logic behind their walls. Schools, prisons, hospitals, even families. They aren't just places. They are technologies of power. Devices for shaping you, molding your identity, making you normal. But what does normal even mean? And who decided it? Let's go back. You're a child. You're full of wild energy. You ask questions. You move freely. And then, slowly, they start to train you. Sit still. Raise your hand. Speak when spoken to. The classroom looks innocent, right? But Foucault would call it a micro-prison in a factory for obedience. Bells ring. You change tasks. You learn to associate time with discipline. You're being programmed, not just to learn, but to comply. And it doesn't stop there. That same logic follows you into your job, into your relationships, into your self-image. You internalize the gaze of others. You start watching yourself. You regulate your own behavior because you've been taught that someone is always watching, even when you're alone, especially when you're alone. This is Foucault's idea of panopticism, a society where control doesn't need chains or guards, just the illusion of surveillance. And it works because you've become your own warden. Think about that. How many times have you edited yourself in a conversation? Not because you wanted to, but because you feared judgment. How often do you perform instead of live? Smile instead of speak? Fit in instead of stand out? The performance becomes so automatic, you forget it's a performance at all. You think it's just who you are. But is it? Here's the terrifying truth. Society doesn't need to force you to obey. It just needs to convince you that obedience is freedom. And once you buy into that, the prison door disappears. You'll guard yourself better than any authority ever could. You'll shame yourself into silence. You'll punish your own desires. You'll become the perfect citizen not through violence, but through conditioning. Foucault didn't believe in some evil mastermind controlling everything. That's too simple. The real danger is that power isn't held, it's exercised. It flows through language, institutions, norms. It's everywhere and nowhere. That's why you can't see it, because you're swimming in it. Like a fish doesn't see water, we don't see power. But it shapes us every second of every day. Let's go deeper. Ask yourself, where did your idea of success come from? The house, the car, the career, the partner. Did you choose that? Or did the world feed it to you, piece by piece, until you mistook it for your dream? Foucault would say that your desires aren't just personal, they're political. If society can shape what you want, it doesn't need to control what you do.
You'll do it yourself, willingly, gratefully.
even proudly. This is the real mind control, not through force, through seduction, through normalization, being through subtle nudges that make deviation feel dangerous. You don't need to be locked up to be imprisoned. You just need to be convinced that the cage is your home. But it goes even deeper. Society doesn't just shape your actions. It shapes your identity, your gender, your race, your mental health. Foucault studied how people were labeled as mad, deviant, delinquent. These weren't scientific truths. They were social categories he created to separate the acceptable from the unacceptable, the useful from the useless. And once you're labeled, you start to live the label. Society tells you what you are, and you play the role, not because it's true, but because it's safe. Here's a question that should shake you. Who would you be if you had never been told who to be? That's not a rhetorical question. Sit with it. Let it haunt you, because the answer holds the key to your liberation. But liberation isn't easy. It means unlearning everything you've been taught. It means questioning your deepest beliefs. It means stepping out of the roles that made you feel seen, but also made you feel small. Foucault didn't offer easy answers. He didn't give us a roadmap, because the map itself is part of the system. What he gave us was a mirror, a way to see the invisible mechanisms of control that surround us. And when you see them, you can start to resist. Not with violence, with awareness, with refusal, with the courage to be unclassifiable. The system wants you to be predictable, manageable, categorized. But what if you were none of those things? What if you were wild again, not reckless but free? What if you stopped performing and started living? This is where the revolution begins. Not in the streets, in your mind, in your choices, in your awareness. Every time you notice the script and choose not to follow it, you reclaim a piece of yourself. Every time you ask, do I really believe this? Instead of, will this make me fit in? You break a link in the chain. But it's not just about rebellion, it's about creation. Foucault believed that identity is not something you discover. It's something you construct. You are not a fixed being. You are a process, an artwork. And you get to decide what kind of art you become. So what are you building? A replica of what society told you to be? Or something original? Something dangerous? Something true? Let's be real, this is hard. It hurts to realize you've been living someone else's life. It hurts to see that your freedom was an illusion. But that pain is sacred. It's the beginning of awakening. The moment you stop being a product and start being a presence. Because once you see the machine, you can't unsee it. And once you stop feeding it, it starts to lose power. Not overnight, but slowly, with every act of truth, every moment of clarity, every refusal to be shaped by invisible hands. You don't need to escape society. That's impossible. But you can stop letting it write your story. You can take the pen back. You can author your existence instead of being authored by systems. So ask yourself what part of your life feels most fake, most performative? Start there. Peel it back. Question it. Strip it down until you find something raw, something real. And when you do, hold on to it. Let it grow. Let it become the foundation of who you are becoming. Because that's the secret. Society may be brainwashing you without you knowing, but the moment you know, the spell begins to break. The moment you see, you start to choose. And no amount of programming can stop a mind that has remembered its power. Now that you've begun to see the invisible architecture of control, the question becomes, what now? What do you do when you realize your thoughts might not be your own? When the beliefs you've spent your whole life defending were planted there to keep you obedient, manageable, and easily categorized. This is the part where most people turn away, because seeing the truth is disorienting. It doesn't just change what you know, it changes who you are. But if you're still here, then somewhere deep inside, you've already made the most important decision, to no longer be a product of society's script. Foucault warned us that our identities are shaped by discourse's systems of knowledge, language, and power that define what is normal, and what is true, and what is real. But these discourses aren't objective. They're constructed. They evolve. And they serve someone. When a society defines what counts as sanity, it also defines who gets to speak and who gets silenced. When a society defines what counts as success, it also defines who gets celebrated and who gets ignored. You've been living inside these definitions your entire life. But have you ever asked who benefits from them? You've probably never questioned why you believe working 40 hours a week at a job you hate is responsible. Or why being quiet in class and following rules makes you a good student. Or why getting a degree, buying a house, and starting a family are seen as the universal markers of achievement. These beliefs are not universal truths, they are products of power. And power doesn't just force, it frames. It shapes the conversation so that the only options you see are the ones that serve its interests. That's how brainwashing works. It doesn't erase your freedom, it narrows it so subtly that you believe you're choosing, even when you're not. Foucault's work wasn't just about exposing systems, it was about showing how deeply those systems live within us. The most dangerous prisons are not external. They are psychological. They are the voices in your head telling you what's possible, what's acceptable, what's appropriate. And those voices? They're echoes of institutions, school, media, religion, government, family. Each one leaves a fingerprint on your mind, little by little. They make you more predictable, more manageable, more useful. But here's the twist. The same mechanisms that trap us can also be used to liberate us if we become conscious of them. That's why awareness is the first form of resistance. When you can name the power that shaped you, you weaken its grip. You create space between the voice in your head and your true self. And in that space, something radical becomes possible: choice. Let's go even further. Foucault believed that truth itself is not neutral. What we call truth is often just the dominant discourse, what the most powerful institutions have decided is true at a given time. Think about that. What if truth is not about accuracy, but about authority? What if the truth you've been taught to defend is just the version that keeps the current power structure intact? When you realize that, your entire reality begins to shift. You stop asking, "Is this true?" and start asking, "Who wants me to believe this and why?" This is not about paranoia. This is about empowerment. Because once you stop outsourcing your truth, you begin to build your own. You stop being a passive consumer of narratives and start becoming an active creator of meaning. That's what Foucault meant by genealogy, tracing the origins of ideas, questioning their legitimacy, and imagining alternatives. It's not just intellectual, it's existential. Because every time you question a truth, you reclaim a piece of your mind. Let's bring it down to real life. Every day, you're bombarded with messages telling you who to be. Through ads, through influencers, through politicians, through teachers. They tell you how to look, how to speak, how to think. This isn't a glitch. It's the system working exactly as designed. But the moment you begin to see the system, you can begin to subvert it. You can wear what you want, not what the algorithm rewards. Say what you mean, not what's socially rewarded. Do what matters to you, not what earns the most applause. But there's a cost. When you stop playing the game turns on you. People will call you difficult, arrogant, weird, dangerous, because your freedom threatens their stability. Your authenticity reveals their performance. Your refusal to be controlled exposes how deeply they've been programmed. And that's why this path is not for the faint of heart. It requires courage, not just to face society, but to face yourself. Here's a question that can break you open. What part of your identity did you create because you were afraid of being unlovable? Sit with that. Think about the masks you wear, the traits you exaggerate, the dreams you abandoned. Not because you didn't want them, but because they didn't fit. Fit what? The mold, the system, the expectations. And now that mold is suffocating you. It's too small for your soul, and the only way out is to break it. Foucault believed in the power of transformation. Not through revolution, but through resistance, through small acts of defiance, through reclaiming your body, your time, your story. That's how you begin to deprogram. By noticing the scripts and choosing not to follow them. By speaking when silence is expected. By creating when consumption is demanded. By being when performance is required. This is not a one-time event. It's a daily practice. Because the system doesn't sleep. It adapts. It evolves. It finds new ways to enter your mind. But so can you. You can become more aware, more intentional, more you. Every day you can ask, is this action mine or was it given to me? Is this belief mine or was it inherited? Is this dream mine or was it sold to me? And when you find the ones that aren't yours, you let them go, without apology, without fear. Because the more you release what isn't yours, the more space you create for what is. And that's the beginning of true liberation. But don't mistake liberation for comfort. They are not the same. Liberation is raw. It's uncertain. It's lonely at first, but it's real. And in a world built on illusions, reality is the most radical act of all. So what would your life look like if you stopped trying to be acceptable and started trying to be authentic? Who would you become if you stopped asking for permission and started giving yourself authority? What kind of world could we build if more people woke up from the trance of obedience and started living by their own truth? These aren't just questions, they're invitations. To remember who you were before the world told you who to be. To reclaim the parts of yourself that got lost in the noise. to become not just conscious but dangerously awake. Because once you wake up, you can't unsee. Once you stop performing, you can't go back. And once you taste real freedom, nothing less will satisfy you. This is it, the final step. You've stepped outside the walls and seen the machinery that keeps society functioning. It's not just cement and steel, it's thought, language, repetition. It's the stories you were told as a child, the metrics you use to measure your worth, the invisible rules you follow every day without asking why. Foucault didn't just want us to critique society, he wanted us to deconstruct it from the inside. To pull apart the gears and ask, who built this? Who benefits from it? And why have I accepted it? Here's the most sinister part. The more progressive society seems, the more subtle its control becomes. You're told you're free, but your freedom is curated. You're told you have choices, but your choices are pre-filtered for marketability, for productivity, for social approval. Even rebellion can be commodified. Even your resistance can be sold back to you. This isn't freedom. It's a simulation of freedom. And waking up from it requires a deeper kind of rebellion, a rebellion that doesn't just resist the system, but transcends it. But transcendence doesn't mean escape. Foucault was clear, there is no outside of power. Power is everywhere. It lives in every interaction, every institution, every word. But that also means resistance is everywhere. Every moment is a chance to reclaim your agency. Every conversation is a chance to speak truth instead of compliance. Every decision is a battlefield. And you are not powerless, you are simply asleep. So how do you wake up? You start by becoming dangerously observant. Watch the way people talk, the way they regulate each other, the way they shame difference and reward conformity. Watch your own mind. Notice when you censor yourself, when you shrink, when you say what's expected instead of what's real. That's the moment to pause, to breathe, or to choose. That's the moment to break the loop. Foucault believed that the self is not a fixed identity, but a project. Something you build, moment by moment, through acts of awareness and intention. You are not a noun. You are a verb. You are becoming. And the more conscious you are of the forces trying to shape you, the more power you have to shape yourself. This isn't self-help. This is self-construction. And it is the most radical thing you can do in a world that wants you to be passive. But here's the truth most people don't want to face. Freedom is terrifying. Real freedom doesn't come with instructions. It doesn't guarantee comfort. It doesn't promise safety. It's messy. It's uncertain. It's full of risk. And that's why most people choose the illusion of freedom over the reality of it. Because when you're truly free, there's no one left to blame. No one to follow. Just you. And the terrifying, beautiful responsibility of creating your life from scratch. So ask yourself, where in your life are you still waiting for permission? To speak? To change? To leave? To begin? Who told you that you needed to earn your own existence? That you had to prove your worth before you could be yourself? These are the ghosts of power whispering in your ear. And the only way to silence them is to speak louder with your voice, with your choices, with your presence. Power doesn't fear violence. It fears authenticity. Because authenticity is unpredictable. It can't be managed. It can't be measured. It doesn't fit into a spreadsheet, a market, a voting block. It breaks the mold and refuses to be categorized. That's why the system trains you to fear your own depth, to laugh at your own intuition, to doubt your own knowing. Because if even a few of us stop playing the game, the whole illusion starts to crack. And when it cracks, something ancient emerges. Something that was buried beneath the programming, a kind of wild intelligence, a primal clarity, the part of you that knows what's true without needing permission. That's the part they tried to train out of you. But it's still there, waiting, watching, ready to rise. Foucault didn't give us a formula. He gave us a flashlight, a way to see what was always hidden in plain sight. And now that you've seen it, the question is, what will you do with that light? Will you shine it on your own life, no matter how uncomfortable it gets? Will you shine it on the lies you've been living, even if it costs you approval? Will you choose truth over belonging? Reality over performance? That's the test. Because the moment you choose to see clearly, you can no longer live unconsciously. You can no longer participate in your own oppression. And that means changes real ones. You may outgrow your job, your social circle, your identity. You may find yourself alone for a while. But that loneliness is sacred. It's the space where the real you begins to form. So don't run from it. Sit in it. Let the silence teach you. Let the discomfort refine you. Let the emptiness become fertile ground. Because from that ground, a new kind of self can grow. One that isn't mass-produced. One that isn't algorithm approved. One that isn't a reaction to fear, but a manifestation of truth. You don't need to burn the system down. You just need to stop feeding it with your silence, or obedience, your false self. Every time you choose to be real, you're weakening the lie. Every time you speak your truth, you're breaking the spell. And eventually, others will feel it. They'll sense the difference. And they'll be inspired to do the same. That's how change happens. Not through force, through frequency. Through a rising wave of people who are no longer hypnotized, who no longer need to be controlled because they've remembered how to govern themselves, not with rules, with awareness, with integrity, with presence. So what would it look like if you lived every day as if you were already free? What would it feel like to make choices from truth, not fear? To create from vision, not validation? To move through the world not as a product, but as a presence? It would look like this. You'd stop performing. You'd start being. You'd stop proving. You'd start creating. You'd stop reacting. You'd start choosing. And in doing so, you'd become exactly what the system fears most, a human being who cannot be predicted, cannot be controlled, and cannot be sold. That is what Foucault was guiding us toward, not a utopia, but a new kind of self. A self born not from obedience, but from awareness. A self that sees the cage and still chooses to fly. A self that no longer asks, "Am I allowed?" but instead declares, "I choose." So the next time you feel the impulse to shrink, to conform, to apologize for your truth, stop. Breathe. Remember, society is brainwashing you without you even knowing it, but now you know. And knowing is the first act of freedom. The next act is yours. Take it. Be the one who sees. Be the one who refuses. And above all, be the one who remembers who you were before the world told you who to be.